LA law. Legal eagles under pressure, behind closed doors.
What the hell was that? What? There's a lynch mob mentality out there that's going to hang an innocent man, and you just helped to fuel it.
You say Rosalind Shays was ousted because of incompatibility, and Kelsey says it's because she was a woman. Which one of you is lying?
The only reason you stuck me on this case is because I'm black.
That's right.
Mr. Kuzak, you are in contempt. You got to call a mistrial now. Take him away. No choice
No
now.
one is safe from that LA law. Thursday at 9 on Central.
So for all the arts and entertainment in the Central area, Thursday night, first night, don't forget to watch it. And now back to the studio.
Some people just never forget their first dance teacher. See Dirty Dancing, the TV series based on the hit movie, on Central tomorrow night at 12:30.
For sale, weekend home with views across the South Downs and the Yorkshire Dales. Excellent sailing and golf. Hot running water, cold running water. Good fishing, home cooking, friendly neighbours, large back garden. When you own a caravan, great weekends and holidays are round the corner. Just get up and go. For a free guide, ask your dealer.
This is my garden. My garden grows into a complete reference work of really practical advice. There's a gardener's diary to help you add colour all year round. You'll learn to prepare summer bedding for continuous colour. There's even a children's corner and alphabetical profiles that build into a dictionary of plants. With My Garden, every corner of your garden can be beautiful all year round. My Garden from Marshall Cavendish is out now.
Created by Laboratoire Garnier Paris to help maintain younger-looking skin. Synergy, the facial skincare range with a unique concentration of active natural ingredients. Synergy represents the alliance of science with nature. Hypoallergenic, high performance, with visible results. My skin feels revitalized. Synergy, the alliance of science with nature to help maintain younger-looking skin. Formulated and controlled by Laboratoire Garnier Paris.
They were in a land that time had forgotten, and what they saw, they would remember for the rest of their lives. The Australian Tourist Commission, in association with Qantas Airways, present Australia. It has to be seen to be believed. For a free brochure, call us now.
Hello, Angela. You look very nice.
One has been asked to do a Nescafe commercial.
Have you? Why?
Because one has taste, that's why. Some people have good taste, and some people don't.
But I drink Nescafe.
Yes, but you don't appreciate the rich aroma.
No, but I love the smell. Are these the special beans?
Please don't touch those.
Oh, go on. One shake is all one wants.
Really?
Nescafe. Coffee at its best.
Is this the one I'm looking for? Yes, this is the one.
Diet Coke.
I searched for the taste of it everywhere. No one can replace it. I must find it, I must chase it. It's the one that can surprise me. It's the one that satisfies me.
Sugar-free, 1 calorie.
Just for the taste of it, Diet Coke.
Obviously, his head's empty too.
You're watching one of the fastest talking shows on television. 90 minutes of uninhibited adult conversation performed live in front of a studio audience. Nothing is left to the imagination, from the bizarre to the unpopular. Opposing bodies meet in a passionate battle for the naked truth. You're invited to join Central Weekend, Fridays at 10:40. But be warned, you might not like what you hear.
In 45 minutes, John Wayne is in the saddle for our next movie tonight, The Comancheros. And here on Central, news at 10 follows in 5 minutes.
There now follows a party election broadcast by the Labour Party.
For the British people, there's a fundamental choice, not only between parties, but between values too. As they've shown in 12 years, Conservatives believe that everything must be centralised. In the Labour Party, we believe that the people of Britain should be trusted to run their own affairs through efficient and accountable local government. That's just one of the reasons why a Labour government will give everyone the right to have a vote in local elections every year.
The Financial Times says, today Labour looks like the competent party with sound ideas on local government. The Conservatives have no policies. Labour believes that every 3- and 4-year-old should have the opportunity of a nursery place. In delivering nursery education, Labour local councils like North Tyneside are top of the league. The Conservatives used to promise nursery education for every 3- and 4-year-old. Now Kenneth Clark says the whole idea was a mistake.
The Financial Times says today Labour looks like the competent party with sound ideas.
Labour believes everyone must have the opportunity of first-rate local services. In York, the Labour Council has a contract with its residents to deliver street cleaning on time, day in, day out, with a hotline to clear up complaints fast. In Newcastle, the Labour Council has a contract with its tenants, and they get their money back if repairs aren't done properly and on time. And Labour councils are top of the league in providing home helps, just part of Labour's commitment to the National Health Service. BET is a provider of council services with Norman Tebbit as a director. Yet BET say, we've been disappointed by the government's continuing emphasis on price at the cost of quality.
The Financial Times says today Labour looks like the competent party with sound ideas.
Labour believes that everyone should have the opportunity to train and to work. In Southampton, the Labour Council is working with private business to develop the old docks and create new enterprises, shops, homes and jobs. But at the moment, another 3,000 people lose their jobs every day. The Institute of Directors said last week, this recession is a failure of the government's economic management.
The Financial Times says today Labour looks like the competent party. The Conservatives have no policies.
They say they want to abolish the poll tax, but they won't get rid of it this year. They won't get rid of it next year. They can't even promise to abolish it in 1993. Under the Conservatives, we will still be paying the poll tax until 1994. Labour has a simple alternative. Abolish the poll tax right away and replace it with a fair system of rates. Under Labour, this year's poll tax will be the last. And Labour won't tolerate a scheme where average families pay more so that a few at the top can pay less. That's why Labour's fair rate system will cost the average family £67 less than the Conservatives' new scheme. And what was the response of the Conservative chairman, Chris Patten? I'm gobsmacked. The opportunity to train and to work and to have your say in local council elections every year. Labour believes in opportunity. The opportunity of nursery education. The opportunity of first-rate local services.
We believe in opportunity for the many. In 12 years, the Conservatives have proved beyond all doubt that they don't. It is time. Time for government to back Britain's industries as other governments back their industries. It's time to raise the standards of people's skills and people's schools, to make a cleaner, safer environment, to strengthen and to modernize our National Health Service. And it's time now. Time to see that all our people have strong foundations for the future. The strong foundations of opportunity. That's what we stand for.
Tomorrow, vote for the people who believe in local democracy. Vote Labour.
That was a party election broadcast by the Labour Party.
In the heart of Britain, this is Central.
Doctors say stop the opt-outs and give NHS more cash. The Bangladesh floods, 50,000 may have died. The Commons override the Lords on prosecuting war criminals. Teachers' ballot rejects a boycott of testing children. And exclusive pictures of the Soviet hoard of Nazis' stolen art. Good evening. The British Medical Association today asked to see the Prime Minister urgently about what it called the crisis in the National Health Service. It said the service needed another £6 billion. The doctors blamed underfunding and the government's NHS reforms for a deteriorating service and deteriorating morale. The BMA said the government should stop any more hospitals opting for trust status and self-management. The Health Service Chief Executive, Mr. Duncan Nicol, today told MPs he hadn't known in advance about the job cuts announced by hospital trusts in London and Bradford last Friday.
The BMA has always opposed the government's reforms. Today, just 1 month after their introduction, it said the system was in crisis. The council, representing most of Britain's doctors, demanded an early meeting with the Prime Minister. It said the problems were so severe the government should immediately halt the opt-out programme.
The anger about the underfunding and the Prime Minister's apparent unawareness of what's really happening in the NHS was almost palpable.
Later, under fierce questioning from Tory MPs on the Commons Health Committee, the NHS Chief Executive, Duncan Nicol, admitted he hadn't known about the planned job cuts at trust hospitals.
Did you know of these impending redundancies before last Friday?
No, I did not know of the number. I knew of the work that was taking place in Guy's to address the financial issues there. The applications we had for trust status did not develop in any detail whatsoever issues around staffing numbers.
The government's view remains that job cuts at Guy's and other hospitals are in the interests of efficiency. Some academics warned today that competition and the high costs of operating in the capital would make London hospitals particularly vulnerable to cutbacks and closures. The Health Secretary insists funding isn't the problem.
Everyone, including the Labour Party, is saying there's no more money overall coming to the health service. It's a matter of using what we've got efficiently.
Are you prepared to see a hospital go bust in London?
No, of course not. That's certainly not a plan, an acceptable outcome.
There are going to be cuts in patient services, and if William Walgrave is in any doubt about that, he should talk to the doctors in these hospitals who know the reality about the hit of patient care as a result of these cuts.
Leaders of the 57 trusts which have opted out met the Health Secretary at a London hotel earlier today. Among them, the chairman of the Bradford Group, where 300 jobs are going.
I don't believe I would want to take part, or anybody else would want to take part, in a conning exercise of the public or a dismantling of the National Health Service. What this is designed to do is to bring new thinking, new ideas into the utilisation of the existing resources and in finding a more efficient way of providing health care for the people of Great Britain.
Although the Health Secretary says he'll talk to the BMA next week, as yet ministers have shown no sign they'll reconsider plans to allow more hospitals to opt out in the coming year.
Estimates from Bangladesh on the number of people killed by yesterday's cyclone and tidal waves range from 25 to 50,000. The government's official figure is 3,000. Tens of thousands are still missing. Norman Rees at ITN reports.
It's been described as the worst cyclone to hit the region this century. Bangladesh, already one of the world's poorest countries, estimates economic losses at £250 million. Prime Minister Zia, who toured the devastated area today, appealed for urgent foreign aid, saying her country could not face the disaster alone. And it may be weeks before the world knows the full scale of the human tragedy. Estimates of death vary between 25 and 50,000. Thousands more are still unaccounted for. Worst affected areas are the coastal regions around Chittagong and Cox's Bazar and the islands of Sandwip and Kudubda. Several other islands, swamped by tidal waves 20 feet high, still haven't been reached.
The whole area is either flooded or under thick mud, which has been left behind when the floodwaters recede. So it is very difficult for vehicles to get through. We will be having to use boats or aerial transport, helicopters. But I think that boats will be the most important thing. One thing I would stress, people will not be waiting around to get aid from overseas. People in Bangladesh are used to disasters like this. They're well organised, and there'll be a whole network of villages which will be helping each other.
But the resilience of the Bangladeshis is being severely stretched by damage to the country's infrastructure. At the port of Chittagong, the second largest city, the harbour bridge has collapsed. Key power and oil installations are still underwater. Up to 1 million tons of rice have been swept away, while thousands of cattle are dead in the fields. The cyclone tore down telephone wires. Overseas communications also remain disrupted, with a major satellite ground station out of action. And throughout Bangladesh, survivors are still on the move tonight, looking for food and shelter.
The government served notice that the bill to allow suspected Nazi war criminals living here to be prosecuted will definitely become law. Late last night, the House of Lords rejected the bill for the second time. The Leader of the Commons, Mr John McGregor, said the government will use the Parliament Act for the first time in 40 years to get the Queen's assent.
Whatever the moral considerations of this bill, MPs also wanted to assert the supremacy of the Commons over the unelected House of Lords. The Speaker said the Parliament Act automatically came into operation because the Commons had twice overwhelmingly voted in favour of the bill.
The House of Lords will be asked to return the bill to this House, where it will be prepared for royal assent. No further proceedings are required in this House.
It has proved and remains a highly emotional issue in both houses, but the Leader of the Commons said it would now become law, a view which gained cross-party support.
It cannot be acceptable that a non-elected, unrepresentative upper house can frustrate the will of the elected House of Commons.
Some MPs felt this was an abuse of the spirit of the Parliament Acts.
May I, through you, advise my right honourable friend that many of us are thoroughly ashamed to be sitting on these benches and find the Conservative government doing what it's doing.
And one left-winger felt it proved something about the Lords.
They're in there for life. Not one have been elected by anybody outside this place, telling the elected House of Commons what to do. Let's get rid of them.
However, the fact that the majority in the Lords was much smaller than on the last vote reflected the unease many peers felt about confronting the Commons. But the heart of their argument was that prosecuting men in their 70s for crimes committed 50 years ago was impractical. The Leader of the House said that issue was one for the courts.
What the House of Commons took a judgment on was that the Hetherington-Chalmers report, which looked into all of this, uncovered a great deal of evidence. And of course we haven't seen the evidence in particular cases for very obvious reasons, but uncovered a great deal of evidence of people here who had undertaken mass crimes.
Hetherington-Chalmers considered 300 allegations of atrocities claimed to have been committed by people now living in Britain, and concluded there was a realistic prospect of convicting 3 individuals and urged a further investigation of 75 other cases.
My family, about half of them, were in fact locked up in a synagogue in Lithuania and burned to death by local people. But it's certainly not any question of revenge as far as I'm concerned. I just believe that justice should be done.
The best documented case against any individual living in Britain is an allegation about the murder of hundreds of civilians in one of the Baltic republics. A team of 9 detectives from Scotland Yard is standing by to begin work as soon as the War Crimes Bill receives royal assent. The investigation will take years and prosecution could cost up to £10 million. It's a serious attempt to pursue the guilty, but it may be too late. Even though it's generally accepted there won't be any prosecutions because of the age of those involved, the House of Commons feels it's made the point that despite the passage of years, the sense of moral repugnance at the crimes that were committed is still just as great. Mark Webster News at 10, Westminster.
Britain's biggest teachers' union, the NUT, has voted not to boycott the new tests for 7-year-olds. Instead, the union will begin joint campaigns with those parents and school governors who don't like the standard assessment tasks either. The boycott was rejected by a majority of 7-1.
Union leaders are insisting that even though teachers won't boycott the tests, they will mount a nationwide campaign aimed at showing that the testing is not as effective as continuous assessment.
The result is a very positive one, a very responsible one, and shows that our members will not disrupt the test this term, but they want, by a very large majority, a campaign to make sure these tests don't exist in a year's time.
Starts with a square.
The national curriculum requires that all 7-year-olds take the test, with the government saying it allows teachers and parents to make an early assessment of a child's needs and abilities. But from today's vote, it's clear that most teachers are opposed to supervising the tests, even though they overwhelmingly ruled out a boycott. Many parents back the teachers, believing their children are too young.
He's 6.5 years of age, he doesn't need these tests, and he is far too young to be doing anything at all like this.
They're just about to go up to the junior school, which I feel that they should be doing work leading up to junior school level, rather than, you know, doing the tests. You know, she feels stressed. They're just too young to do it.
Are you prepared to break the law?
Yes. If they want a fight, they're going to get it.
Some head teachers find themselves under pressure and believe it's premature to judge the new system.
I feel that parents perhaps ought to give it a chance to wait until the process is through, and then, again, on the basis of evidence, to actually make their protest at that point if they then do feel that it has really harmed the children.
The government has today welcomed the news that there'll be no disruption in the classrooms, but it's clear there's still little agreement between the Education Department and teachers on how best to assess young children.
The Prime Minister, Mr Major, said the April inflation figure, due out in a fortnight, would show what he called a further dramatic fall and prove that the government was achieving real success in the battle against it. The city expects the headline inflation rate to be down from 8.2% to about 6%. The Labour leader, Mr Kinnock, said that with the underlying rate falling less than half of 1% over the last 4 months, the government was simply suppressing rather than curing inflation.
The city, where John Major was inspecting the latest post-Big Bang technology today, has already worked out that the fall in mortgage interest rates during April and lower poll tax bills should produce something like a full 2% drop in the headline inflation figure when it's announced on the 17th of this month. And with voters going to the polls in the local elections tomorrow, the Prime Minister was, of course, anxious to preview the good news today.
We're achieving real success in the battle against inflation. Already, the headline retail price index figure is down by nearly 3% since last October. The April figure, to be released later this month, will show a further dramatic fall from the present level. And inflation will then go on falling throughout this year and into next year.
Tories say they are. But winding up their local election campaign today, Labour was still hammering away at what they call the government's economic incompetence and their refusal, as Labour sees it, to come out and fight.
It's almost as if the Tories don't want to do well. Perhaps they're frightened of being forced into a June election, which they now know they cannot win.
Labour added a final salvo of attack by claiming that a leaked document showed how the government had once contemplated 14 bans for the new replacement for the poll tax, the council tax, but had settled on 7 so as to protect the rich.
It is quite clear that John Major and his colleagues have chosen to protect themselves and their friends and those who can most afford to contribute to local services, to protect them at the expense of everyone else.
But the minister responsible for the council tax said Labour wanted to return to what he called an envy tax, the rates, so as to sting the wealthy.
If you live in a property 5 times as expensive as another one, it doesn't mean you're 5 times better off. It means you should pay something more, but not 5 times more.
And so what was the Liberal Democrats' reaction to Labour's latest revelations today?
I'm bound to say that I think it tells us more about the Labour Party than about the government. Because here they are yet again digging up yet another dead body from the graveyard and trying to make it stand up. Of course the government would sensibly have been considering all sorts of options. They'd be mad if they hadn't, and they wouldn't have been an effective government if they hadn't, and Labour would have done just the same thing.
And in case anybody hasn't got the message yet, Downing Street said it again today. The government has decided on 7 council tax bans, and that is it. Michael Brunson, News at 10, Westminster.
In 1945, the Soviets took many of the great art collections built up by Nazi looting back to Russia. They also took Hitler's library. Will Russia give it back? And if so, who gets it? An exclusive report in part 2. Plus, the MCC bowl the maidens out of the long room. And the insurers say £57 million for the biggest sparkler outside the crown jewels. That's in a couple of minutes.
Since the 14th century, the people of Buxton in Derbyshire have offered thanks for the purity of their spring with a well dressing made from flowers. Why should Buxton be blessed with a spring so pure? Only nature knows why.
Yes, Mrs. Robson, we absolutely love the Aspidistra story. I think we should be able to fit it in this week. It's just a matter of moving the gymkhana over slightly. Yes, bye-bye. Where's Tom? Thank you. How can I run a newspaper like this?
Reporter wrapped by boss admits checking instant savings account balance at Lloyd's Bank. Apologises profusely.
You? A saver?
Interest escalates as cash quits current account to savings account. Bank issues frequent statements. In fact, I'm ready to go to Lloyd's Bank and start talking first-time buyer mortgages.
Stop talking. Start writing.
Right.
Ask about the range of savings accounts at Lloyd's Bank.
This week, we're sending out over 7 million do-it-all booklets. Inside, you'll find loads of lawnmowers, bags of barbecues, great garden furniture, all at pre-budget prices. And vouchers worth up to £40. So if we're giving you vouchers worth this much money, why aren't you down at Do-It-All?
To prove that granary bread has a unique nutty flavour, we took one night spot, gave the left-hand side ordinary rolls and the right-hand side granary rolls. We then added the world's worst singer.
I am here to thrill you. Tonight is the night.
So there you have it, conclusive proof that people prefer the nutty flavour of genuine granary bread. Ask for it where you see this sign.
The Surfline Power Steam Iron has the main controls here on the handle. So with a Surfline, this is all you need to dampen, to add steam, or to power steam. The Surfline Power Steam Iron from Rowenta.
See the Cars of the Stars at Classic and Sports Cars International. There's private cars for sale, an American auction, auto jumble and thousands of classic cars at the NEC this bank holiday weekend.
News at 10 has exclusive pictures of the secret Soviet collection of Nazi art treasures removed from Germany at the end of the Second World War. The Soviets have kept them hidden ever since. Now they are deciding whether to return them. ITN has also managed to film the collection of rare books owned by Adolf Hitler, which was also seized by the Soviets. It includes manuscripts by both Wagner and Goethe.
At the Uzkoye Sanatorium in southern Moscow, the Soviet Union's top scientists receive the best in medical care. But the iron fence protects more than the privileged patients. Inside, there are works of art seized from Nazi Germany. This exclusive footage, secretly filmed, provides the first glimpse of Moscow's wartime booty. These paintings, believed to be by 17th and 18th century French and Flemish artists, are the tip of a very big iceberg. Outside the sanatorium grounds stands the Church of St. Anne, its padlocked doors and shuttered windows hiding what was, until now, another tantalizing secret. This is where Stalin hid Adolf Hitler's library, originally more than 1 million volumes dating back to the 18th century. They are said to include manuscripts by the composer Wagner. ITN became the first outsiders ever to see this possibly priceless collection. We found piles of rotting books covered in dust, many gnawed by rats. There's no record of what's inside the church, but many books and manuscripts have apparently disappeared over the years. Local journalists say that workmen whose job it was to air the documents during warm weather would sell them off for bottles of vodka.
The Red Army swept into a devastated Berlin in 1945. It carried away around 2 million artifacts, justifiable recompense in Moscow's view for its own catastrophic losses. Much was returned to East Germany in the 50s, but vast quantities remain. Hidden behind the Kremlin walls is one of the richest prizes, King Priam's gold, a treasure excavated from the site of Troy by the German archaeologist Heinrich Schliemann in 1873. His wife Sophia liked to model the more lavish items of jewellery. This note from the Third Reich authorized the German seizure from occupied Rotterdam of the Koenig's collection of hundreds of drawings by old masters like Rubens, Titian and Tintoretto. The Soviets took it from the Germans, and it's now hidden in Moscow's Pushkin Museum, although officials there won't acknowledge its existence. And Impressionist paintings under lock and key in the Soviet Union include Degas' Place de la Concorde.
We are, acting quite as Nazist actors. It seems to me that it's absolutely unbearable now.
Soviet art historian Alexei Rastoguyev wants everything returned to its country of origin, Germany or elsewhere. But he's pessimistic, fearing it'll be used as barter for Western credits.
They'll declare that they are returning everything. They'll declare it, but return, maybe not 10%, but 20%, I don't know. And use this amount of our treasures, well, as a card in some political game.
The officials who hustled us out of the Hitler Library in St. Anne's Church were certainly anxious to guard their booty. But even if the art treasures themselves remain behind locked doors, the secret of their existence is now out. Tim Ewart, News at 10, Moscow.
Thousands of Soviet troops and plainclothes detectives made sure today's May Day rally in Moscow passed off without the big anti-government demonstrations of last year. There were some protests against Mr. Gorbachev, but otherwise the rally was low-key. It had been organised for the first time by the trades unions, not the Communist Party. Mr. Gorbachev's rival, Mr. Boris Yeltsin, wasn't there this time. He was meeting miners in Siberia, but the two did send each other greetings telegrams.
Here in the Commons tonight, the government's been asked to think again about compensation for people infected with the HIV virus by contaminated National Health Service blood. That's people other than haemophiliacs who were offered help after Mr. Major replaced Mrs. Thatcher as Prime Minister.
Around 300 people throughout Britain are thought to have contracted the HIV virus as a result of blood transfusions during the early 80s. Some have already died from AIDS. Others, like this man, whose identity we've protected, have seen their lives ruined.
There's not a day goes by without thinking about, my health condition, because I have to watch myself and what I do and how much I do. Having the HIV virus, you can't get a mortgage, you can't get life insurance. I feel at least we should be compensated in some form.
Last December, the government agreed that some £42 million would be paid to 1,200 haemophiliacs who'd contracted HIV through transfusions. But despite sustained pressure from all sides at Westminster, the Department of Health has refused to widen the compensation offer. Tonight, Labour's Harriet Harman was on her feet to attack what she called the injustice of the present compensation scheme.
The government were right to give compensation to the haemophiliacs, but they were wrong to deny compensation to those who were not haemophiliacs, but who got infected with contaminated blood in exactly the same way.
The government have consistently claimed that haemophiliacs are a special case. Tonight, the Department of Health said although it sympathised with the HIV sufferers, it believed they were no different from other victims of unintended medical accidents. One of those who received HIV-infected blood has written to the Prime Minister, saying she'll continue to fight the virus which has invaded her life. Events here in the Commons today are an indication that many MPs are not content with government sympathy. They say they'll continue their fight on behalf of remaining victims. Robert Hall, News at 10, Westminster.
The all-male Marylebone Cricket Club, the MCC, voted tonight to stay like that. It threw out proposals to allow women onto the 20-year general waiting list. There was a majority for letting women become honorary life members, but not the two-thirds majority needed. The former England women's cricket captain, Mrs. Rachel Hayhoe-Flint, had applied to join. She said she was extremely disappointed not to get in.
For 200 years, the famous long room at Lord's has been women-free, except, of course, for waitresses to serve the men. This evening, it was clear members of this most exclusive club were in no mood to change the habits of a lifetime.
It's a gentleman's club. The ladies have their own clubs.
I think they're very beautiful and very lovely, but I'm not sure that we're quite ready for it yet.
You'll be accused.
Might be a bit of a shock to a lot of quite elderly members still.
All against it.
Why?
Because I don't see any reason for change.
The MCC secretary seemed almost apologetic after the vote.
It might not do the image of the MCC very much good if we are a leading club in the world, and we might not be moving into the 21st century, let alone the 20th.
What I found most staggering was the apathy of the fact that only that 10,000 members didn't even vote. So I don't know whether they don't exactly care about their club. They could possibly be dead, you never know.
So this last bastion of male chauvinism remains intact, and you have to wonder if it's worthwhile for lady cricketers ever to bother to try again. Giles Smith, ITN Sport, Lords.
Tonight's European Championship soccer. In Group 2, San Marino 0, Scotland 2. In Group 4, Northern Ireland 1, Faroe Islands 1. In Group 7, Turkey 0, England 1. The match between the Irish Republic and Poland is on ITV later. In the Friendly International, Wales 1, Iceland 0. And in the Barclays League Division 4, Maidstone 0, Carlisle 0.
And now some news just in. According to Turkish radio and television, 30 British troops have been ordered out of Turkey for allegedly manhandling and harassing a Turkish official at a Kurdish refugee camp. The Ministry of Defence here said the men had been flown out by helicopter and redeployed elsewhere, but not because of the complaint by Turkey.
Finally, a great-grandmother who had her purse stolen last week has been celebrating a record win on the pools. 78-year-old Peg Regan from Essex shared the £1.6 million with her daughter Colleen. Today they collected the cheque from actor John Thor, who used to be Inspector Regan in ITV's The Sweeney. Now he's better known as Inspector Morse. Mrs. Regan says there'll be presents for all the family, and now she'll get her garden wall repaired as well. Well, it would take more than a pools win to buy a diamond shown off in London today by De Beers. It's bigger than anything not in the crown jewels. The price? It's priceless, but you could try 100 million.
Only occasionally does the Premier Mine east of Pretoria produce something rather special. At the turn of the century, De Beers discovered the famous Cullinan diamond here. Today, rattling along the conveyor belt, an unprepossessing collection of rocks that will end up as industrial diamonds. But coming through the wash 5 years ago, a diamond that once again established the mine's fickle reputation. A real rough diamond, at 599 carats, an oblong crystal of exceptional colour and quality named the Centenary stone. The cutting and polishing took 3 years.
And then came the moment. Came the moment where I had to start touching the stone. There was only one way. There was no technological possibility. Only the oldest method in human history. It was carving deep into the stone with a diamond into the diamond.
Today, under the unwavering gaze of security guards, the Centenary diamond, now cut and polished, was unveiled. Insured for £50 million, worth who knows what, this fiery stone is now the largest flawless diamond outside the crown jewels. Peter Sharp, News at 10 in central London.
And that's the news at 10 from Julia and me. A very good evening to you.